Welcome to the Dynasty Trading Room YouTube channel. My name is Joe, and today we're going to be exploring trade targets for every single pick in the first round of your 2025 Dynasty Rookie Draft. But if you guys love Dynasty content as much as I do, subscribe to this channel for weekly content focused on Dynasty Fantasy Football, the NFL Draft, and more. But again, today with every single pick in the first round of Rookie Drafts, I'm going to be giving you guys a trade target that you should be targeting if you have that pick and you're willing to trade it away. Obviously, not all the trades are going to be one for one. Some of them will require packages to get the players I'm talking about. I'll try to specify that as it comes up. But if you guys like this style of video, let me know in the comments. We'll do plenty more of them. We can even do a second round video if you want. But let's go ahead and get right into it. First off, for the 101, obviously, the pick for most players is going to be Jeudy, running back out of Boise State. And yes, he is a generational running back prospect. He's extremely well-rounded with elite speed, contact balance, vision, power, whatever you need. And if you're willing to trade away the 101 for a ton of value, the main player I'd be looking to get in return of a similar tier is Puka Nacua, wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams. Yes, Nacua did have a down year last season because of that knee injury he sustained early in the year, but he showed that he can still be an alpha wide receiver one when he returned from that injury. During the second half of the season, in games where he played over 50% of the team's offensive snaps, he averaged well over 20 fantasy points a game. That is downright elite and is well worth a first-round pick in startup drafts. So if you're not sold on Jeudy, or if you have a weakness at the wide receiver position rather than running back, Puka Nacua is a player in a similar tier in Dynasty for me that I think is going to be good for a very, very long time. I also expect him to be locked into a contract extension sooner rather than later. That being said, I wouldn't advise towards trading out of the 101 slot. I think Jeudy is a fantastic prospect, but Puka Nacua is having one of the best starts to a career that a wide receiver has ever had in the history of the NFL. He set the rookie receiving record with 1,486 yards back in 2023 when he was drafted, and almost managed to hit 1,000 receiving yards in only around 11 games played in 2024. You're getting an elite floor with a really high ceiling as well. Again, I'll say it, I wouldn't advise trading the 101, but if you do, some kind of package involving Puka Nacua is what I would be going for. He's the exact type of player you're looking to add as a cornerstone to your Dynasty roster that could help you compete for a championship year in and year out. He's going to be great for the rest of his career, and I expect him to be a perennial top 10 receiver in the NFL. Moving on to the 102, we're going to go right into it. First off, with the second overall pick in rookie drafts, I would expect a player like Amarian Hampton, Teteroy McMillan, or Luther Burden III to be selected with that pick. I'm expecting most Dynasty managers to take Tet McMillan, but if you're not completely sold on any of the prospects after Jeudy in your rookie draft, packaging the 102 with a little bit more value to get Drake London, wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons, is a fantastic idea. Like Puka Nacua, London is only 23 years old still, and he's one of my favorite players both in Dynasty Fantasy Football and the wider landscape of fantasy football in general. He is a true wide receiver one, and I think he's going to be a top 10 receiver basically for the rest of his career. Again, I don't think you're going to be able to get Drake London with just the 102. You might have to package in another pick or player with it, but Drake London had 1,271 yards and 9 receiving touchdowns with Kirk Cousins throwing him the ball in 2024. If you don't remember, Kirk Cousins seriously regressed after the Falcons signed him to a massive contract during last year's free agency period. So when the time came, number 8 overall pick in the 2024 draft, Michael Penix Jr. stepped in at quarterback and made a couple decent starts to close out the 2024 season. In the 3 starts where Michael Penix Jr. was at quarterback, Drake London totaled 352 receiving yards. That is an unbelievable sum for only 3 games with a new starting quarterback. If that quarterback to wide receiver connection keeps up in 2025, Drake London might repeat as a top 5 fantasy receiver once again, while Tet McMillan is a really good player with his blend of size, speed, and yards after catch ability. I think Drake London right now has the higher ceiling, and it's not particularly close. London is an underrated route runner with unbelievable hands and great contested catch ability. He's already shown the ability to be extremely productive with a bad quarterback situation, and if Penix develops into the Falcons quarterback of the future, London's ceiling is absolutely through the roof. Next up, with a 3rd overall pick in rookie drafts, I think if you have the opportunity to move it for Devon Achan, running back of the Miami Dolphins, you should absolutely take that chance. Achan silenced all the injury concerns in 2024, playing 17 games and remaining extremely productive over that stretch as well. He led all running backs in receptions, receiving yards, and was tied for the league lead in receiving touchdowns as well. So he is an absolute PPR monster when it comes to fantasy football. And like the first 2 players I said, he is also still only 23 years old and has only been in the league for 2 years, so he still has plenty of time left to do serious damage for your Dynasty football team. Achane is easily a top 20 player in Dynasty Fantasy Football, so trading the 103 where you might get a player like Amarian Hampton or Luther Burden, who are very talented players with high ceilings, is well worth it because Devon Achan is downright elite in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Like I said, that receiving production as well as his dominance and efficiency on the ground make him a terrific running back to own in fantasy, and his blazing speed will keep him at the center of this Miami Dolphins offense for a long time. He's extremely involved in every phase of the team's offensive attack, and I don't expect that to change anytime soon. The only concern for Achane is that he's dramatically more productive on the field when quarterback Tua Tagovailoa is healthy, but with the offense around him at full strength, Devon Achan is unstoppable in fantasy football, and I would not hesitate to trade for him if I have the 103 in Dynasty rookie drafts. Moving into the 104, where you're still getting the same type of player at that pick in rookie drafts, that being Hampton, Burden, maybe even a guy like Ohio State's Emeka Egbuka, or Penn State's Tyler Warren if you want to take a shot on a guy more down the board. But in exchange for this pick, I would ask for Tampa Bay Buccaneers running back Bucky Irving, who burst onto the scene in his rookie year after being selected in the 4th round of the 2024 NFL Draft. Coming out of Oregon again as a 4th rounder, he wasn't atop the depth chart to start the rookie season. He beat out incumbent starter Rachaad White for the starting job about halfway through the year, meaning there's still a ton of growth possible for Bucky Irving's ceiling in Dynasty. I think there's a ton of room for him to get more snaps in 2025. I mean, he wasn't even playing half the team's offensive snaps for most of the year. And again, with a player like Bucky Irving, you're getting safe, efficient production. He averaged 5.4 yards per carry on 207 attempts during his rookie season, and he was extremely involved in the passing game as well, catching 47 receptions for 392 receiving yards. So overall, even though you could get a guy around the range of Luther Burden, Marion Hampton, Matthew Golden, around that range, I would still immediately trade the 104 for Bucky Irving. He's that good, and I think his ceiling is so high in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Again, he's still very, very young. Moving into the 5th overall pick, so again, we're moving into this tier of the mid-first round picks. I would trade it for a player like Jonathan Taylor. He's the Indianapolis Colts star running back, and at 26 years old, he's still got a ton of football ahead of him, and just had one of the best years of his career in 2024 with the Colts. He was especially elite in the fantasy playoffs, averaging the most fantasy points per game among running backs from weeks 15 to 17, so again, those fantasy playoff weeks. In 2024, he had 1,431 yards, along with 11 rushing touchdowns, and he did that while averaging almost 5 yards per carry. On a workload of 303 carries, that is remarkably efficient in a bounce-back year for Jonathan Taylor, especially when he was tearing up NFL defenses down the stretch of the season. If Taylor can stay healthy next season, which yes, has shown to be a question mark over the last few seasons, I think he can be a top 10 fantasy running back, and still at only 26 years old, can be extremely productive and worth that 5th overall pick in Dynasty rookie drafts. Now, I'm a big fan of a couple players around this range. Again, Tyler Warren, Matthew Golden, even Luther Burden still are players that could be around this range that I really like. But Jonathan Taylor is just too dominant in fantasy football for you to decline a trade like that for the 5th overall pick. Yes, he comes with his risks, but he's a workhorse running back who was extremely productive last year and is still going to dominate the league for years to come. Next up at the 106, I would trade it for one of the most undervalued, unappreciated, and underrated players in all of Dynasty Fantasy Football. That's Kyren Williams, running back for the Los Angeles Rams. At only 24 years old, he already has multiple seasons of over 1,100 rushing yards under his belt, and he's also logged 26 rushing touchdowns over the past 2 seasons. That is safe, consistent production that you're looking for in a Dynasty running back to build your team around, and Kyren Williams is exactly that. Williams saw a bell cow workload in 2024 with the Rams with 316 carries that resulted in almost 1,300 yards and a whopping 14 rushing touchdowns. Again, I think Williams is a little too underrated in the fantasy and dynasty community. He is a fantastic running back who I expect to finish inside the top 10 yet again in 2025. This is one of the players, again, that I think you may have to package something with the pick, this being the 6th overall pick, to get him. But if it's not too much more in value with that 6th overall pick, I would still ship it off to get Kyren Williams because he is a franchise cornerstone running back that you can build around for years. Even though this 2025 draft class is elite at the running back position, I only think there are a couple guys that have the ceiling that Kyren Williams is currently achieving right now. And I think the only rookie running back that might go after the 6th overall pick with a production ceiling similar to what Williams is already posting is Caleb Johnson, who I think can be a 3-down running back at the next level. But obviously Williams only 24 years old. He's the type of guy you want for a pick in this area. And yeah, you might have to package a little bit more to get him, but it's going to be well worth it, I promise, whenever he does the exact same thing again in 2025 that he's been doing for the past couple years already. Next up, moving into the back half of the first round at the 107, you should trade it for Xavier Worthy, wide receiver of the Kansas City Chiefs. He was a 28th overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft and was going around this range in Dynasty rookie drafts last season. Worthy had a slow start to his rookie campaign, but after an unfortunate season-ending injury to wide receiver Rashee Rice, Worthy became Kansas City's top receiver and really showed up down the home stretch of the season, especially in the playoffs. playoffs. In weeks 11 through 17, Worthy put up 40 plus receiving yards in every single one of those games and had 3 receiving touchdowns in that span as well. His game-breaking speed is what attracts me to him. If Kansas City can revitalize their offense in the deep part of the field, I think Worthy is going to be the guy to do that. I trust Andy Reid to put him in a great position to succeed with his athleticism and his, again, elite speed. And with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, his ceiling is really, really high. Obviously, Rashee Rice is coming back from that injury, but we don't exactly know what his timeline is, and even if he returns to start the season, I think Xavier Worthy is going to be the second go-to target in this offense. If you're willing to give up a shot at a guy like Matthew Golden or Colston Loveland, even a guy like Trevion Henderson or Quinshon Judkins, Xavier Worthy is a player who I think is worthy of this 7th overall selection. Next up, we have the 8th overall pick, and I would trade it for Sam LaPorta, tight end from the Detroit Lions. And don't get me wrong, this tight end class is really strong in the 2025 NFL Draft with the likes of Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, and Harold Fannin Jr., with a lot of good pieces below them as well who will go on day 2 and day 3. But let's not forget that Sam LaPorta is still one of the best young tight ends in all of fantasy football. In 2023, he had the most fantasy points among all tight ends in a breakout rookie season. He had an admittedly slow start to the 2024 season, but in 4 of the last 5 games of his regular season, he put up over 50 receiving yards and had 2 receiving touchdowns in that span as well. He is still an electric player at the position. As a great athlete with fantastic hands and really good route running skills, I think the upside is still there like it was in 2023 to maybe not be the best tight end in fantasy, but to be a top 5 finisher over the next few years. I believe he's still going to be a centerpiece in this Lions offense with Jared Goff still getting a ton of volume to throw the ball. I think a lot of that will go Sam LaPorta's way. And while yes, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams are very strong presences at the wide receiver position, I think there's enough to go around in this offense for Sam LaPorta to be very, very relevant and relevant enough to be worth the 8th overall pick in Dynasty rookie drafts. Again, you are going to be missing out on players like Colston Loveland, who's another tight end, but Sam LaPorta, through his first 2 years in the league, has looked like one of the league's best young tight ends. I truly believe he's going to continue to be productive in 2025 and is worth the 8th overall pick in rookie drafts. Next, with the 9th overall pick, we're going to go with Josh Jacobs, running back for the Green Bay Packers. He may be 27 years old, so not the youngest player in the world, but he's still an elite running back in fantasy and received over 300 carries in his first year in Green Bay after signing there in the free agency period before the 2024 NFL season. He was also automatic on the goal line, scoring 15 rushing touchdowns, and over 1,300 rushing yards at 4.4 yards per carry is nothing bad. He's worth one of these late first round picks because if you are a manager picking that position, you're likely one of the contenders in your dynasty league, so adding a player like Josh Jacobs for the 9th overall pick, and granted, you may have to add a little more value than just the 109, but adding Jacobs would be a really strong move for your dynasty team going forward. I think he's a mid to low end RB1 in fantasy football next year, and I think he's going to continue to be elite and receive a ton of volume in Green Bay, where he rushed for the 2nd most single season yards in his career. But if you like one of the prospects here, especially one of the running backs in your rookie draft, that's a solid choice as well because they have good ceilings here too. But if you're looking for production right now, Josh Jacobs is your guy. Moving on to the 10th overall pick, I would trade it for Chase Brown, running back of the Cincinnati Bengals. While I wouldn't be surprised if Cincinnati adds running back competition through the draft this season, I think Chase Brown has earned the starting job, and it's pretty obvious. After a breakout performance in Week 4 against the Carolina Panthers, he took over the backfield from Zach Moss and became one of the top running backs in all of fantasy football. An ankle injury late in the season caused him to fall just 10 yards short of his first 1,000 rushing yard campaign. But if he gets more carries in 2025, I expect him to reach that number easily. His volume only ramped up down the stretch, as he received 20 plus carries in 4 of his last 8 regular season games. It's obvious that the Bengals trust him to be their top running back, and though I wouldn't be surprised if they add another player at that position, I don't see why they would move on from Chase Brown as their starting running back. He was efficient, explosive, and everything they could want at the position, especially with such a strong passing game to complement it. But I think it's a pretty fair trade going from the 10th overall rookie pick to Chase Brown. Again, at that pick, you might be getting a player like Caleb Johnson, Emeka Egbuka, Matthew Golden, Trevion Henderson, even Quinshon Judkins around that area maybe. But Chase Brown is a dynamic young running back who's involved in both the rushing and receiving game, who's only trending up in terms of volume in fantasy football on one of the best offenses in the entire NFL. If you can get him for the 10th overall pick in rookie drafts, I would not hesitate to do that. Moving on to our last 2 picks, for the 111, I'm targeting a player who I like maybe even more than Chase Brown, but who I think will be going for less value in trades. It's going to be Chuba Hubbard, running back for the Carolina Panthers, who came off a ridiculously productive season in 2024, breaking out and becoming the Panthers' top running back. For his production, Chuba Hubbard was rewarded with a 4-year, $33.2 million contract extension. That places him among the NFL's highest paid running backs, which tells me that he's in Carolina's long-term plans chance to compete for the playoffs and maybe even a Super Bowl down the line. And with 2024 second-round pick Jonathan Brooks unfortunately facing another serious knee injury, I think Chuba Hubbard has this backfield locked up. Again, at only 25 years old, Chuba Hubbard ran for 1,195 rushing yards and 10 rushing touchdowns, while also averaging nearly 5 yards a carry in a breakout season that no one saw coming. He was one of the biggest bright spots in an overall solid year for the Carolina Panthers that saw a lot of growth on the offensive side of the ball. I believe in Dave Canales and the rest of this coaching staff to get the most out of their offensive players. I think Chuba Hubbard is going to be a huge part of their strategy moving forward. And I think he's becoming a little bit undervalued just because the Panthers added Rico Dowdle on a short-term, low-money contract in free agency. The former Cowboys running back rushed for over 1,000 yards during his last season in Dallas. But the terms of the agreement between Dowdle and Carolina makes me think that he's going to be a complimentary pass-catching back because it was only a one-year, $2.75 million deal. While Dowdle will definitely take carries and probably be very good with them as well, I think he'll definitely be the RB2 on this team and that Chuba Hubbard's value is fairly safe when it comes to Dynasty Fantasy Football. Again, he's only 25 years old and on par with rookie running backs like Trevion Henderson, Caleb Johnson, and Quinshon Judkins. He's worth more than the 11th overall pick, but how people are valuing him now, I think you can get him for that, and you could end up with a steal of a trade in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Moving on to our last pick, I would trade the 12th overall pick in rookie drafts for Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns, who I think is also another player that's being extremely undervalued in Dynasty. After a really underwhelming 4-year stint with the Denver Broncos, Jeudy was traded to Cleveland for a 5th and 6th round pick in the 2024 NFL Draft and immediately signed to a long-term extension. Jeudy broke out and posted a career-high 1,229 receiving yards, and he's entering next season as Cleveland's top wideout. And sure, a lot of his production came with Jameis Winston at quarterback, who's no longer there. Jameis Winston pumps out a ton of passing yards, but with the signing of Joe Flacco this past week, who I think has a great chance to be the Browns' starting quarterback week 1, Jeudy still has a lot of value in Dynasty and is surprisingly only 25 years old after already having 5 years of NFL experience. Jeudy is still an elite route runner who showed that he can win in all parts of the field last season. And again, I think he's being a bit undervalued even how productive he was last season. I wouldn't be surprised if he repeats as a top 20 wide receiver in fantasy football, making him well worth the 12th overall pick in rookie drafts, especially because a lot of the top tier rookie wide receivers will be off the board at that point. You might get a player like Colston Loveland, Quinshon Judkins, Jaden Higgins, or Travis Hunter around that draft selection with the 112, and I think those guys are all pretty equal in value to Jerry Jeudy in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Overall, I think Jeudy is going to be productive again, and while he may not hit the career highs he set in 2024, I think he's still going to be great. And don't sleep on him entering 2025. If you have the last pick in the first round of your rookie draft, I would trade it for Jeudy if possible, if you're weak at the wide receiver position. That's all I got, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Dynasty Trading Room if you like content just like this. Again, we post it weekly. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'm Joe, and this is Dynasty Trading Room.